Hi. Okay, so I am in that in between stage of the beginning of the year and my birthday. And my birthday is in February, so it's coming up and it's currently the first week of January, so I'm right in the middle. I always hate the fact that my birthday's so early on in the year because I would make New Year's resolutions and then you kind of have this other milestone a month from the time when technically you're supposed to be fulfilling your New Year's resolutions, only to realize that I can't make any goals because I haven't made the New Year's ones, and then I'm just feeling down bad about everything. But anyway, that is all a fake milestone. And obviously, I don't need the beginning of the year to make changes. And that's something that I learned. But all this to say that I've decided to jot down everything I've learned in my years of life. And this is why I can't journal because my handwriting is awful. But I ended up writing down 33 lessons that I learned. And I think I'm going to make this an annual tradition where I reflect on the things that I learned. I don't know if I'll always reach 33 lessons, but here goes. So, lesson number one is to always have a goal with whatever you do. Like, let's say at work or with a hobby or with a project or a relationship or whatever it is, always go in with a goal. And I've noticed that during the times of my life where I felt lost, where I wasn't able to stick to something, whether it's a habit or a hobby or even sustain a relationship, it was usually because I lost track of what the main objective was, like what the main goal was. And so it's important to always have a goal with whatever you do, big or small. Otherwise, you lose sight of why you're doing it and it kind of loses its importance in terms of your priorities. And if you don't have a goal, then I guess it's okay to do things just for fun sometimes, but just know that it'll be hard to sustain if you don't have an objective. And another thing I learned is that everyone has a message. And I learned this by kind of years of wishing I was something else, like whether that was like from a different culture or that I had a different upbringing or that I didn't have to move around a lot and I just had a stable home. Like all these things that I couldn't control that were in the past that I felt like I wish I had it any other way. I realized that actually, like, maybe there's a reason I am born into a specific culture or have a specific background or grew up a certain way. And that's because, like, everyone has a message in life. And maybe that's just part of my message and part of my story. And I also know that I'm super unique. And I know that sounds so cringe to say, but we all are. And that means that we all have our own unique message to share with the world. I don't know exactly what that message is, but I know that everyone has a message, and that's just like your upbringing is part of that story and part of that message. And so there's no sense in feeling regretful about these things that you can't even control anyway. Another thing I learned is the importance of self-fidelity. We all know it's important to be loyal, and I think I'm very loyal to other people, but I'm not very loyal to myself. And I let myself down a lot. And that's where this concept of self-fidelity comes in, because whenever you break a promise to yourself, you feel really bad. And I think that affects your self-worth a lot. And so being loyal to yourself and having that self-fidelity, it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but for me, it means showing up authentically. And when I look back at the moments that I feel the most embarrassed about or most regretful about, there are moments where I felt that I showed up inauthentically and wasn't fully myself. And that can include anything from like shying away from where I'm from, or I don't know, like concealing certain things or lying about certain things or pretending to be something I'm not. Like all of that is a break of a promise to yourself. And the more regularly you do it, the less self-worth you have. And I feel like everything kind of hinges on that. So if it becomes really commonplace to not be loyal to yourself and not be faithful to who you are, then over time it just kind of rots your soul. So self-fidelity is really important. It is like connected to authenticity. Another thing I learned is to pay attention to what people notice about you. And that could be like something in your personality that people point out, or even something in your looks. Like that could be a tool that you utilize in the future. And it could be also something that you do really well, like a skill that you have, or a trait that you have, or something in your appearance. Like, I don't know, it really could be anything, but if you pay attention to what people point out, like let's say 2 or more people point out the same thing, then that's just a tool in your arsenal that you could tap into and maybe share in a different way, whether that's like help people find that trait in themselves, or come up with a product or solution that could help people tap into that trait for themselves. Burped. Okay. Another thing is to build systems. I struggled so much with building habits, and it could be anything from like hygiene, or working out, or drinking enough water. Like literally anything, any habit you're trying to build, any goal that you have, try to build a system around it. So let's say I wanted to make sure that I get my 2 liters of water a day, because I was not drinking anywhere near that. Like my water intake was basically my morning coffee and like a few sips here and there, but I wanted to be really intentional about the amount of water that I drink. So I started getting these 1.5 liter water bottles and chugging them in the morning. Yes, I spend most of my morning / afternoon going to and from the bathroom, but I've decided to pair it up with a workout so that I kind of, I'm not going every 5 minutes and I'm just forced to go at the end of my workout to use the bathroom. But I'm kind of trying to couple certain habits that I'm trying to build together. So getting enough water is one of them. Showering every day is another one. Working out every day is another one. And I'm trying to lump those 3 together so that I do them in like a sequence. And I build system around it. So having the outfit, my workout outfit prepared, even if it's just mentally the night before. And so I know it's almost like a roadmap. When I wake up, I'm gonna do XYZ and actually get it done. So build a system around it. Now, this one I still struggle with, but it's to speak up. And speaking up is literally a muscle. And if you don't practice it, if you don't practice communicating, then you kind of lose that strength and you build a lot of fear around it and resentment towards yourself. It's something I've struggled with for years. And I can actually remember the moment it started. I think I was in the 3rd grade or 4th grade. And I remember I was in class and I was like, the teacher kept looking at me to answer. Like he didn't specifically call on me, but he kind of gave me this he was giving me this verbal cues because he knew I knew the answer. And I just was telling my mind was telling me, I guess, like, answer, like, speak up, like, respond, you know the answer. And I just couldn't bring myself to answer the question. And I remember feeling kind of trapped in my own body. And then over time, I just caught myself doing it more and more. And then it got to the point where I would convince myself that I didn't know the answer, and that's why I'm not speaking up. And then it got even harder for me to try. And it just got more and more hard over time. And then now I'm at the point where I question things like 10 times before I answer. And the thing, like, when I eventually answer, it's like something that, like, I had to go through all these hoops to get myself to answer. And a lot of the time, if I answer like incorrectly, or if I say something embarrassing, it will just hurt 10 times more, because it's like I've thought about it so much before answering, and then I finally answered and it sucked. And so just like it's debilitating, really. But yeah, speak up because it gets easier with time, and I'm great in small settings and small groups. I just need to learn how to do it in bigger groups, and it's kind of where I'm struggling. But the lesson is to speak up, because I'll feel better afterwards. And what's the use of having all these thoughts in this big old brain if I'm not sharing them? Anyway, my next one is being confident is a choice and being scared is a choice. So, just like you wake up every single day and you make a bunch of choices, you can choose to be confident. Like, why wouldn't you be? You know, you are cute as hell and you can choose to be confident. Like, the thing about insecurity is it's like a cycle. So let's say you're insecure about something. Let's say you're insecure about your weight, and then you lose the weight. You will fixate on something else that you're insecure about. And then once you address that or cope with it, you'll be insecure about something else. And it's like this endless vicious loop. So there's always something. And so you can actually choose to be confident. And that is just a choice that you can make every single day. Next, be an active participant in your life. It took me so long to realize this, but I was a very passive participant in my life, and that is because of how I was consuming social media. I would just be consuming social media so much to the point where I feel like I lost my sense of taste, as in like I couldn't discern good content from bad content, beneficial content from non-beneficial content, entertaining content from boring content. Like, I was so desensitized because I was spending so much of my time doing it. I was in autopilot. I was just watching things for the sake of watching them and not actually gaining anything. And I know, like, when I say gaining, I don't mean, oh, it has to change my life, like it has to be self-help content. I mean, I wasn't even entertained. Like, I was bored out of my mind, but I was so desensitized to just consuming content that I didn't care, and I was just watching it. And so I think I tried so many different things to actually stop and cut down on the time I spent online and the time I spent specifically consuming social content. I think the only thing that worked for me was this idea of I am no longer an active participant of my life. Like, I am just passively participating in other people's lives or consuming content around other people's lives that I'm not actively participating. And this time is passing, like years are passing, and I'm kind of at this like standstill with my life. And that's what it took to finally get me to install this app that helps kind of close or add this gate to social platforms like Instagram and stuff. That's like when I was most receptive to that idea of using this app and actually implementing it, is when I realized that, wow, like time is just passing by and I'm completely stuck, and I'm so wrapped up in random people's lives that I completely have no clue or no interest in my own. Anyway, build good karma, super important. And you might not realize it at the moment when you're doing something good for like no reason, but I really believe something good will come back to you. And it's not to say that you should be transactional and like do something good just for the sake of it coming back, but just like believe in your heart of hearts that doing something good for someone is genuinely a good thing, for them, for you, for society as a whole, and do things with that intention of just like doing good and I guess leaving the world a better place than you found it, even if it's in a super micro way. It helps. And then I just wrote family is the best. And what I meant by this is that I, like, growing up, always had these horrible thoughts around losing a family member. And I mean, like, specifically my nuclear family. And it was like this horrible vision of that happening. And I always knew in my mind that that was going to be the worst day of my life, like whenever that happens. And I genuinely wish that I would go first and all of that. And it's like a horrible, intrusive, obsessive thought that I just couldn't switch off. But what I started to realize is that every day I wake up and my family's fine and healthy, that is by default a good day, because if my worst day is something bad happening to them, and then I woke up today and they were fine, then that is by default a good day. And so I obviously, like, building on that, I want to be even more intentional about visiting them and spending more time with them, like quality time with them, one-on-one time with them, calling them more, connecting with them more, being honest with them more, because I always, silly as it sounds, always felt like I couldn't fully be myself in general, but even with those that I love the most. And so I want to be even more intentional about that. Next is to document more, because your brain space is finite. So whatever you're putting in your brain, whether that's like random social content or song lyrics or whatever it may be, it is taking up the spot of something else, most likely a memory or something like that. And so try to document more. Obviously, my handwriting sucks. I always struggled with really poor handwriting, but it could be videos, it could be audio, voice recording, it could be pictures, just anything that gets your thoughts down and helps you document, because you won't remember. Like, even if you think something's a core memory, you could easily forget. And so it's important to document all these memories and store them somewhere. And I want to be even more intentional about that. Another thing I learned is that you can't be jealous and proud. Those two feelings cannot coexist. If you're feeling extremely envious about something or someone, you can't also be proud of yourself, because that feeling of like envy, it doesn't just exist in a silo, it kind of spreads. And it's really awful, because sometimes that negative talk makes you feel like you have really low self-worth, and can sometimes make you take actions consciously or subconsciously that are destructive, whether it's towards yourself or towards others or just whatever it may be. It just doesn't exist in this void. Like, it will always spill over, and you kind of have to nip it in the bud. And you can't just be like, don't feel jealous, because it's still a human, like a very raw human emotion. Like, children feel it, animals feel it, like every living being feels it to some extent. But it's just realizing that it can't exist with pride. And when you realize that, you start to think of all the great things that you've accomplished and good things about yourself, and you realize that's such a shame to miss out on those very positive feelings, because you're replacing them with fixating on what you don't have. But yeah, it took me forever to learn that lesson, but I'm happy to say that I'm there. Obviously, I sometimes like fall into old thinking patterns, but realizing it is the first step. Another lesson that I learned many years ago is to fail quickly. Like, it's okay to fail, just fail quickly. Like, give yourself a few days, maybe a week, but then you have to bounce back. And for me, the reason I struggled with this lesson was because I feel like I was never taught that it was okay to fail. I was never taught how to fail. I was such a sore loser, basically. And if I failed, I would get like so depressed and down bad. And if it was a public failure, as in like I lost the competition or something like that, it would hurt 1,000 times more, and I'd feel so much shame and embarrassment, and it would take me forever to cope with it. And so fail quickly is a very important lesson to me. And I don't know if it was the lack of sports or like what, but I struggled with this so much. purpose, a sense of purpose. So I have consumed so many different formulas around finding your sense of purpose, and sometimes it gets a little like woo woo, like, but I've realized that, like, for me, or many people believe this, like, your sense of purpose comes from benefiting others. Like, it can't just be about you. Obviously it should feel rewarding to you, but like ultimately it's in the service of others. And it's like an intersection of like what you're good at and what people compliment you on, or what people think you're good at, and then it's in the service of others, something along those lines. But anyway, I think my purpose is to help others feel like they belong, because I always struggled with a sense of belonging, and I genuinely believe that belonging is the most powerful thing in the world. And feeling like you belong, like, it can really transform your life and your well-being and your day-to-day. And then on the flip side, when you feel like you don't belong, that can lead to so many negative things, like feelings of loneliness and depression, and just like completely disconnected and isolated from society. And so there's so much power in feeling like you belong and helping others around you feel like they belong. And it's not like belonging is like kind of the cornerstone, but there are these other feelings around it, like feeling understood and that you fit in and you're part of this group or community, and all of that is connected. And so I think my purpose in life is to help others feel like they belong and feel like they are understood and feel that sense of like comfort and calmness. And yeah, so that is, I think, my purpose. I try my best to practice that as much as possible, and obviously there are days where I catch myself slipping, but I know how important it is for me to feel those things, and so I want to make sure that others feel those things when they're around me. Another thing that I learned is that there are no shortcuts in life. Nothing is free, and whenever something feels too good to be true, it probably is. And you should, I mean, I hate to say it, but you should always kind of question things and be a little suspicious. Because yeah, there are no shortcuts in life. Like, you want something done, let's say you want to move to a different country or change something about your life, like, there are no shortcuts. If you take a shortcut, it will probably come to bite you in the butt eventually. So yeah, just if you want something done, try your best to do it, and do whatever you can to make it happen, whether that's like smaller goals or whatever. But just like know that you're not just gonna wake up and it's gonna land in your lap. No shortcuts in life. Another lesson that I learned is I'd rather be delusional than nihilistic. I struggle with nihilism a lot. Like, I can easily be so defeatist, so negative, hear an idea, shoot it down, which I never thought I was until someone pointed out that I'm so negative, and my reaction to an idea is always no. But I'm also very defeatist. Like, even if I want something and then the first time the door slams shut in my face, I'm just like, oh, I'm never gonna have that. Like, that's never gonna happen for me. And so I decided that I'm gonna be a little bit more delusional. And for me, delusion is kind of connected to like an unlimited self-belief and freeing myself of limiting beliefs. And so I think that it's all connected, and I want to be a little more delusional, because if that means being less nihilistic, then all the more power to me, I guess. And then the other one is, if it's scary, it's probably worth it. Obviously within reason. But I'm very, very, very risk averse in life, so I'm not going to do anything crazy. But at the same time, you know that like very cliche quote that's like, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. I guess that's kind of kind of the same thing, but it's more like if you're torn between two choices and you're really terrified of making one, it's probably the right one to make, because I mean, nothing good in life comes very easily. Like, aside from a relationship, I really think that a relationship built on hardship, like, obviously you will face hardship, but like at the beginning, it should feel kind of easy and natural. Like, you shouldn't feel like you're forcing it and really struggling. But I mean, like with goals and stuff, a lot of the time, the scarier things, at least for me, someone who struggles with anxiety, usually I'll say no to a lot of opportunities because I'm scared of them. And most of the time, saying yes is the right thing. And then there's build it and they shall come. Do your research, but don't get stuck in the research. Just build and create. And eventually people will find it, especially if you have the right foundations. Like, you're building it with a specific person in mind. When I say a specific person, I mean someone with a name that you ideally know and can talk to. And then more and more people will come. And then recognize people. Recognition is so important. It is so strong. Whenever I get recognized, like verbally recognized, or my efforts get recognized, I feel 1,000 times better about myself. And I know people respond to recognition in different ways. So for some people, it's like financial or like whatever. But I genuinely believe that on some level, even if you're motivated through other means, like, recognition does go a long way. And so I want to recognize more and more people in my life, and it doesn't have to be someone that I know and see every day. I should recognize them, and I do, but I mean, I even want to go out of my way, and like, if I come across a piece of content that I felt was great, or if I connect with someone online, I'm gonna reach out to them. They probably won't reply, but I'm gonna reach out to them anyway and recognize them for it, because even if there's like a 1% chance that they read it, maybe it will mean something to them, or maybe it will uplift them, even if for a moment. But again, good karma. And then the other lesson is ego aside, always. A lot of the time when I'm given feedback or I hear a comment, sometimes it's just like backhanded and rude for just the sake of it. And whenever that happens, it usually says more about the other person. But I'll always put my ego aside and think, is there some truth to this? And I can only do that if I put my ego aside and try to look at things objectively. It is so goddamn hard. But if I could do that more and more, I genuinely think it will make me a better person. So I'm going to try my best to put my ego aside and look at things and genuinely wonder if there's some truth to them before I react. Very hard. Create opportunities. Don't wait for things to land in your lap. Like, go out of your way to create them and create an environment where you're receptive to them. And this could mean anything from just like connecting with people, personal branding, all of that, but create opportunities. Like, nominate yourself. Don't wait for someone to nominate you for something, or audition, or apply for fellowships and roles and that kind of thing. And don't just wait for someone to discover you, because I mean, you could be waiting forever. So you have to kind of create opportunities for yourself and be an advocate for yourself and your skills. And then always learn. So learning is a skill, and if you go for a long period of time without learning something, you kind of lose a bit of that confidence. And so you have to go out of your way to learn something. It could be a skill or a fact or just anything, but always try to learn something. And learning is a painful process. It will start off really fun and cool and rewarding, but then you'll reach this point where you're almost stuck and plateauing, or that it's really, really difficult and you need to overcome that hump to actually learn the skill. So you have to stick to it. Yeah. And then financial literacy. Oh my God, my lack of interest in math has come back to bite me in the butt. It's not like all the things that I learned in math class, like I'm seeing them in day to day, but just like my complete disengagement, I think has made me less interested in other mathematical things like financial literacy. I just got a financial literacy training from my dad a few weeks ago, and it has taught me that I have so much to learn, but it's so important. Like, I need to make better spending habits and, yeah, keep improving when it comes to that, but I need to actually be engaged. And so that is a big fat lesson for me. Another one is that you are younger today than you ever will be. And this lesson has really effed me up because I have been struggling with the passage of time, feeling like time is flying by, feeling like my life is like behind me. And it's like such a stupid thing because I'm still young, but it's kind of like this idea that your age is a mindset in a way, and how you feel kind of affects how you present yourself outwardly. And so you kind of have to keep like nurturing that spirit and that optimism in life. And I know it sounds super cliche, but I think realizing that today you're younger than you will ever be, and instead of feeling so bad about the passage of time, you're kind of wasting more time, and that's the biggest irony. And so realizing that by tomorrow I'll be older, but even then I'll be the younger that I've ever been, the youngest that I've ever been. And I think realizing that is like so important because it really reminds you that you should seize the day. And then eat to live, don't live to eat. Like, for years, especially COVID years, I was living to eat. Like, my life will revolve around breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks in between, dessert. I would have an insatiable appetite, and I would have no restrictions in a bad way. And I think that it's fine not to restrict yourself, because if you restrict yourself too much, it's also a bad thing. But at the same time, the way that I was doing it was just like, my life revolved around my meals and nothing else. And that is also not healthy. And that brings me to my next point. Yes, my life can't revolve around food, but it should revolve around memories and not mementos, because I spend so much money on like consumerism and not enough on experiences and memories. And so I'm just collecting all these mementos. And it really took this summer of like thrifting and passing by all these estate sales and things like that to realize that I'm just leaving my loved ones with a shit ton of stuff that they won't know what to do with, and will probably end up in a landfill, or if I'm lucky, bits and pieces will go where they belong, which is with people who appreciate them. But then, like, what happens then? You know, it's just like accumulating more and more things. So I want to be more thoughtful about what I spend my money on and what I consume, and give things away that I don't use while I'm capable of doing it, and can hopefully try and find them the right home, versus just accumulate a shit ton of things that genuinely weigh me down. The next one is to make things. There are moments in life where I felt very fulfilled, and these are moments where I built things with my own two hands. I'm not saying I've built a table or a chair or anything like that, but just like, even if it's an art piece, or I don't know, I started like this website archive for embroidery patterns, and whatever you build with your own hands, it will feel so rewarding. And I think it's a great way to spend your time. So you're watching TV and you're like knitting a scarf, or making a cross stitch pattern or something like that, it will feel so good. And so if we spend our time making things, my God, it will really truly feel like you have spent the day in a good way. And it will encourage you to build more and more and make more and more. The other one is around this idea of being an imposter. I know every like cliche lesson is in here, but what I learned about this is that the more I talk to people, the more I realize that almost everyone I spoke to struggles with imposter syndrome in some shape or form. And so I started to think of all these people that I meet with, these brilliant people that I look up to and respect. They all struggle with imposter syndrome. Then who isn't struggling with imposter syndrome? Chances are many of us are struggling with it. And then the people who are genuinely like super arrogant, in my view, don't struggle with it or seemingly don't struggle with it. And so all these brilliant people are just like in the shadows. And it just makes you think that it's such a waste of an emotion and state of being. And then again, if everyone around you is feeling it, then like the people who don't feel it are probably like just like the most irritating people. And so I want to flip that switch as much as possible and realize A, so many people around me are struggling with it, so I should kind of normalize it. And B, I should really get over myself. And I think that's something that I need to work on more and more. The other lesson I learned is that everything comes to an end. And I don't mean it in a morbid way, but like the job that I'm currently working, it will eventually come to an end. Whatever like hardship I'm going through, it will eventually come to an end, and everything comes to an end. And so I need to just not overthink things too much and not make certain things my whole identity. Like my job is not my identity, and I need to figure out what other things make me happy and that I enjoy, because everything will eventually end. The other thing I learned is to work hard. Work hard. And always have a good work ethic. It doesn't mean just do a bunch of manual things versus like working smart or automating things. It just means work hard. And especially now, like I feel like I have enough energy and mental strength to work hard. And so I want to put my time and hours in working hard and making the most of the time and energy that I have. And so work hard. And then wear your giggle on your sleeve. You know how some people wear their heart on their sleeve? That is stupid to a certain extent, but wear your giggle on your sleeve. Like if something makes you laugh, laugh. I am known for my smile, and that sounds ridiculous to say, but that is something people have pointed out a lot, and it makes me think that maybe people don't smile as often as they should, and people certainly don't giggle as much as they should. And I really feel like that is a lost art, and we should practice it more. Like especially if something makes us laugh, we should just laugh and not try to hold it in and just enjoy the moment, because yeah, happy giggly moments are like few and far between, and so we should make the most of them. And then another lesson that I learned is that sadly, no matter how hard you try, you are the villain in someone else's story. And it could be one person, it could be more than one person. It doesn't mean you should go out and do evil, obviously. You should always have good intentions, try your best to be a good person, but you should also be okay with confronting someone if something goes wrong, or speaking your mind, or just this idea that not everyone has to like you. In fact, some people can severely dislike you, hate you even, and you can be the villain in their stories, and that's okay. You need to be okay with that because it's bound to happen. But yeah, it sucks, but it's bound to happen. And then the final lesson is to genuinely believe that you're lucky. I spent a lot of time thinking that I was so unlucky, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy because you if you believe it so much and then whenever something bad happens, you're just like, I'm so unlucky. Of course it happened to me. But then it kind of makes you neglect all the good things that actually happen and like makes you close the door towards this like optimism and idea that good things can happen to you. And just as that is a self-fulfilling prophecy in a negative way, saying you're unlucky every single time something bad happens to you, then the flip side is also true, saying you're lucky every single time something good happens to you. Yes, you worked hard and it's not all luck, but part of it is luck. And I'd be kidding myself if I said everything I got in my life I got because I worked hard. Yes, working hard is important, but also you have to believe that you'll get lucky, that you'll get selected and hired and chosen and succeed in certain things. And there is an element of luck in all of that. And believing that you're lucky is so, so important. That is it. I've distilled 33 lessons that I picked up during my time on Earth, and I'm still a work in progress, and I haven't mastered all of these, but I think I'm getting there. I mean, realizing things is the first step. So that is all. Yeah, I'm gonna sign off.